Okay, I'd like to call this regular council meeting to order for May 27th, 2024, and recognize that we are gathering and governing on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox Nation, and we are grateful for their grace and collaboration. Before we start, I just want to send my condolences to the family of Ken Allen, who was a firefighter for 36 years and 19 years as chief in Cumberland. While he was here, the firefighters made this book, which is really cool, that celebrates 100 years of the Cumberland Volunteer Fire Department. And just wanted to wish his family and everyone in the village who knew him our condolences. And could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Do we have to remove one item?
Yes. The delegation we could remove, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, remove the item, which one is it? 4.2. That delegation's not going to be here, and then move the rest of the agenda.
Thank you. Seconder. Thank you. All in favor? And adoption of minutes, regular council meeting May 13th.
Move the minutes.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor? And delegations. Cumberland Community School Society, come on up. You're welcome to sit or stand in whatever combination you like. Just make sure your mic is on so the hordes of people watching this meeting at home can hear you. Welcome.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice to see you all today. So we're here to talk about the Cumberland Community School Society and our youth programming. So CCSS has now been operating in the village for 24 years.
Woo.
So we're really dedicated to enhancing the quality of life in Cumberland. Thank you. Through food security initiatives, inclusive recreation, and community development. So currently operating out of the school as well as the United Church, we currently provide a healthy lunch program, after-school activities, a youth center, community programs, and the Cumberland Food Share. But today, of course, we're here to talk about our youth center and after-school programs and to provide an update on the programs you're supporting through our service agreements. So I just wanted to give a bit of background because not all of you were counselors at the time, but the center was established in 2015. So at the time there wasn't a lot of programming for youth in Cumberland, and so we worked within the school and the broader community to do a needs assessment. And in talking to youth, they expressed an interest in having an unstructured drop-in space where youth could hang out and socialize with friends after school in the evenings. So when I was working on this report, I looked up the needs assessment that we did back in 2015, and specifically why people thought that a youth center in Cumberland was important. So the youth said, a youth center is important because we're all bored, so we have something to do and a place to feel safe. Family members commented that the geographic isolation of Cumberland made it difficult for youth to access programs available elsewhere in the valley. And parents also talked about the importance of positive role models and having a safe, nurturing environment for kids to talk. And then the one that I could relate to the most is it's about supporting and having compassion and acceptance for young teens through a challenging time. So it's not necessarily about fixing things as much as creating a community culture where we say we are here and we see you guys and we really care about you. So I think this really illustrates the work that we try to do here in the community. So just making people feel valued and let them know that we're here and we see them and we care about the youth in our community. So our youth center, after conducting the needs assessment, we received some initial funding from both the village and the school district, and the school district gifted the use of a classroom. So we got a lot of donations from the community of the pool table and the foosball table and furniture. So in March 2015, we opened our drop-in youth center. So the goals of the youth center are to provide a safe and inclusive space for youth to socialize, offering programming, life skills, support services, and opportunities for leadership, and also to work collaboratively with other organizations to integrate services. And I think our goals tie in really well with the village's strategic focus of creating a diverse and inclusive community. So by having a program that is accessible to all youth, regardless of their socioeconomic backgrounds, really helps to increase the diversity and inclusion in our community. So our youth center is now in its 9th year of operation. It's open 3 days a week to youth aged 11 to 15 with a variety of activities and events planned throughout the year. It's a popular spot. We had 156 youth access the youth center last year. It's conveniently located on the school campus. It allows participants to either walk home or take a late bus for those who live in Royston and Union Bay. And then we have an annual $20 membership fee, which is super affordable and includes unlimited drop-in visits. We also include a food security piece with all of our programs, so we have meals available for youth who may not have enough groceries in their fridges at home. And in addition, the youth center plays a frontline role by providing a place for youth to seek information about other services in the Comox Valley. So we're really committed to the values of diversity and inclusion, and our program staff really work hard to ensure that everyone feels welcome, regardless of their sexual orientation, their gender identity or expression, their religion, background, or income level. And because we work in the school, we have a captive audience for our programming and the ability to reach our more vulnerable youth. So through our daily food program, we've built a lot of existing relationships with youth, and we encourage those who we know would benefit to attend after school, which helps to increase usership. In 2002, we introduced a girls group, which welcomes all girls and girl-identifying people, be that cis, non-binary, or trans girls. So that group really attracted some youth who were not comfortable attending the youth center in the past. So we know there's a lot of research-based evidence to say that there is a lot of benefits to participation in a youth center. It decreases high-risk behaviors, improves school attendance, academic performance, social behaviors, and awareness of healthy lifestyle choices. It also increases opportunities for leadership and provides a sense of belonging and community involvement. So I'm going to pass it over to Kate, who's going to talk a bit more about more of the details of our programs, and she can tell you, as a frontline staff person, how she sees these benefits play out in our community.
Hi guys. Oh wait, how do you do it? Okay, so we're gonna start here with one of my favorite things, communication. We use a variety of methods to communicate with youth about the CCSS Youth Center. And one of our primary ways with youth, because a lot of them do not have social media or email addresses, is through posters. So we have them up throughout the school and in youth-friendly zones throughout the village, and we work together with youth to create the posters as well. So depending on what they are into at the time reflects on what shows up on the poster. There is a range of activities from crafts to pools to screens, and currently there is a big Risk board game phase happening at the youth center, so that's made its way onto the May calendar. We just started our grade 5-6 night, and they're requesting slime because that is the age they are. And one youth was having a hard time. He's moving at the end of the year, and he comes to the youth center with his little girlfriend, and he's all sad about moving. And he needed a little reminder that he is still special. So we had a mac and cheese night, which was his favorite, and we called it Free Food for John night, and he brought all his buddies, and it was great. We also send an email out each month to the parents to let them know what's happening at the youth center that month. We send them the calendar, and it's an opportunity to connect with the parents, because this is a primarily youth-focused space. We treat the youth as adults while they are there, and we very infrequently see parents, so it's nice to be able to still connect with them once a month. So these are pictures mostly from our current grade 5-6 night, which we have just started. We do this each spring as a transition piece. At the end of the school year, we consider grade 5s to be in grade 6. So as soon as the school year is done in June, you are now in grade 6. You're able to attend the youth center at any time. But it's a big jump from grade 5 to grade 6. So we like to give them a bit of a transition time through May and June. And we do this as a grade 5-6 night. So the grade 6s can be there as role models, lead the way, and show them the behavior expectations. And as the grade 6 were the previous youngest ones, it kind of gives them that opportunity to step up and be excited about their space and show them the way. Perfect. So I am a strong believer in the benefits of the youth center. I have been there for 9 years now, and I've had the opportunity to see so many youth go through the doors. And now I feel very old, and I go through places in town, and I see them working and having jobs and serving me alcohol, and it's just great. We have youth from all backgrounds attend the youth center, including those from different socioeconomic and those that homeschool, those that identify as LGBTQ2S, and also youth with autism and ADHD. And one of the reasons we started the girls group is that our primary demographic is boys. It's almost always boys in the youth center. And we do not cater to the stereotypical coolest kids at the school. But when they are in the youth center, they are not known for being the kid who can excel at class or being the kid who can focus. They're known for the things that make sense to them. So this is the kid who seeds the best worlds in Minecraft. And this is the kid who watches the YouTube videos and does these battle drawings, and then we pick who's going to battle who. And this is the kid who always wants to play Uno, and they play Uno together. And so they see each other through these different lenses and through a different way of being, and then that carries through into the school classroom. So that instead of just being, well, that's the kid who's always goofing off and is making a mess of the classroom, they can see them in a different light as well. And that creates a benefit to the teacher and to the class culture too. We've had one parent say that this is the first time his son has had a group of friends and how excited he is to come every week. Because a lot of, it's hard. Being a grade 6, 7 boy is a hard time, and it's nice to have a space to be. There tends to be regulars at the youth center. The same kids come frequently, and these kids become their own team. And they're not kids that typically hang out together at school because they're at the youth center for a whole variety of reasons. Either their parents not home after school, they have a hard time making plans of their own to meet up with friends, so they come here, or they're here to just use the phone, which we have a lot of people come through. And a lot of kids don't have access to a phone to make plans with their parent after school, or for the free food. So it's a whole factor of kids who wouldn't typically hang out together. But having these additional relationships between them in an unstructured zone, again, helps out within the school classroom setting because they see each other in different spots. We have a youth that used to come all the time in grade 7, and she's very mouthy, and then found their footing with friends, and they stopped attending the youth center, which we typically see in grade 8 or 9. But they're currently having some friend drama, so they have come back. And so they're hanging out, they're doing crafts. We've gotten them the things that they're into at the moment to give them a little safe space to be until they find their feet again, and we will send them on their way, and they will go to Vanier. We also have the Vanier kids come back in grade 11 when their bus comes out, and they come through and they think they're all big now, and we make a collage each year of all the kids who have attended that year. And they go back and look through the collages, and they say how young they were and grab some condoms from us and head back out into the world. We have a concession at the youth center, and we sell items at cost to the youth, although we mark up some of the less healthy items a bit to encourage them to make healthier choices. The concession provides youth with the opportunity to practice some life skills by paying for items, getting change, looking at what they have and what they can afford. And it can become quite collaborative, as sometimes you only have 75 cents and you really need $1, and they work together so that they can buy bigger items and then share. And it's quite interesting to watch all the gambling and stuff happen. This fall, we started a pool night. The pool community in Courtenay donated a new pool table to us, as well as gifted us a volunteer instructor. And this has been a great night for kids with a whole range of abilities, from those that have literally never played pool before, to one youth who had gone on to Vanier, and his dreams are to be a professional pool player, and he comes every time, and he is incredibly good and has now been asked to join the Adult League in Courtenay. So this program helped us lure back youth who had aged out of the youth center and gave them the opportunity to come back under a different way. Last year, we also started the babysitter meet and greet event. This program is a benefit to everybody. The youth meet at lunch hours, they fill out questionnaires about themselves, and they use this information to create a poster and resume. We talk about babysitting expectations that they have and the expectations that they think parents will have, and the best way to communicate those between each other. And then we practice interviewing each other. We bring in younger students to interview the babysitting group, and then we host the event. And at the event, parents come from our Mama-centric group and from elsewhere in the village, and they can meet the babysitters face-to-face. They can interview them on the spot. So it gives the youth the opportunity to practice real-life interview skills, but it also gives parents the opportunity to find a babysitter. There's so many people that are new to this town. They don't necessarily know families with older kids. And just putting a post up on Facebook seeking a babysitter and having somebody come to your house that you do not know can be a little scary. And it's scary for the kids to have somebody they've never met before. So this allows everybody to meet each other ahead of time and decide who would be the best fit for your family. All right, Sue.
Yeah, so in addition to our youth center, we also offer structured after-school programs for youth. So in 2023, we offered 10 different programs for youth aged 11 to 15 with 72 youth participating. Programs like ringette and knitting, art classes, baseball, soccer, and hiking club. There's just a real wealth of expertise in our community, and our programs bring people together and to share their skills and passions in a way that benefits both the students and the instructors. So again, we work really hard to make our programs inclusive by removing common barriers to recreation. All our after-school programs are offered for free at no cost. They include a healthy snack. We provide sports equipment for those who don't have their own. And we also provide educational assistance for students who need extra support in order to participate. And we don't just send home a program flyer, we talk to students, we call their parents and facilitate participation, and we say hi to them in the hallway and remind them that they have a program after school. So when youth are participating in these programs, they learn new skills, make friends, connect with adults in their community, and build confidence. So our bike programs are a really great example of what we try to strive for in our programs. We have an after-school bike club that currently has 28 students participating and 12 community volunteers. We also run an after-school trail building program in partnership with the United Riders of Cumberland. They provide their UROC trail crew, takes the kids out, and they help to maintain the trail network. The community's been really supportive, and both community members and Dodge City Cycles work together to donate some bikes. So we have a fleet of loaner bikes that kids who don't have their own can use, so they're still able to participate in the program. And so when kids are doing these things, they're engaged in healthy after-school activities, so they're less likely to have unproductive use of time after school. So it's just our youth center financials. So in 2023, our operating expenses were $47,000. So the biggest expense, of course, is wages. Revenues came from, so the concession runs on a cost recovery basis, and then revenues come from user fees, our Village of Cumberland Service Agreement, grant funding from the province of BC through the Community Gaming Grant, as well as fundraisers and donations. So our budget for 2024 is slightly higher, taking into account inflation, and also we're working really hard to keep our wages competitive to reduce any staff turnover that we have. And so the additional revenue for these programs is coming from an increase in our service agreement funding, so thank you for that. You increased it to $16,000 from $14,000. We got a little bit extra from BC Gaming this year, and of course we'll contribute more from our fundraisers and donations, which leads me to segue into Thunderballs. So Thunderballs is our annual fundraiser that we hosted last May Day long weekend, and it was a huge success. So we sold out for only the second time ever in the history of Thunderballs, and with ticket revenue and sponsorships, the event grossed $56,000. So that, of course, will go towards funding programs like our food share and our youth center and after-school activities.
Cool. So our future youth center goals are to continue to sustain and evolve our current programming, to increase hours and cater to a larger demographic. In the summer, we do go down to being open 2 days a week, but we are open throughout the summer months. And in the fall, girls group will start again, and we hope to be open late one evening as well to provide an opportunity for Vanier youth to attend. to work with the school district to make the facility more accessible and ensure long-term use. We have a long-term use agreement, but there's always talk of our building one day being renovated. We shall see what happens. And to establish and strengthen relationships with other Comox Valley service organizations. At Girls Group last year, we had a discussion about periods, and we discovered that many of the girls had never even heard of period panties. So we reached out to Bluebird Pads, and they gifted a pair to each of the girls that were attending, as well as a training kit and extra pairs that we could give them to some youth who didn't have any supplies at home. So that's one of the ways we're working to establish and strengthen relationships with other Comox Valley service organizations. We have also been in contact with the Foundry and are working with them to come to the youth center a couple of times a month to discuss their services and bring their services to us. It can be hard for youth to get to the Foundry in Courtenay. It's hard for youth to leave Cumberland, period. We want to reduce that barrier by having them come to us instead. And they are amenable to that, and hopefully we can start that up in the fall. There is a huge benefit to youth for having a large group of trusted adults in their lives, people outside of parents and caregivers. And the volunteers that help put on the CCS programs, such as the pool nights, the bike club, Lego club, yoga, and the art programs, or become that. These are people that see youth around the village, and they can say hi, and they can check in with them. But it's not just them seeing the youth, it's the youth seeing them as well. Teenagers can be intimidating, but when you have already met them in a program, it's easier to say hi, and those interactions benefit both sides. And for that people can be seen and be a valued part of the village community. And the more layers of connections that we can create between residents, the stronger I think our community can become.
Yeah, so as an organization over the past 4 years, we've been working really hard just to strengthen and sustain our current programs, ensuring we have adequate facilities to operate, and also to improve our communications so that our work is well known and better understood in the community. So we've accomplished a lot of what we set out in our 2001 strategic plan, and we'll be meeting again in the fall to be updating our strat plan. So we just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for your continued support of the youth center and programs. So the village has been supportive right from the inception, and your continued support has really enabled us to be able to continue to operate this program. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of that amazing work. Awesome. Questions, council, or
No
comments?
questions, just thank you guys. You guys are awesome. Love CCSS. First I've heard of the babysitter meetup. That's a great idea.
Nice.
Yeah, keep up the good work. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, similar. Thank you guys so much. I'm proud to be supporting this.
Thanks for the babysitter meetup.
You took a photo.
The last guy showed up in a Camaro with a cigarette. I don't know. No, that wonderful work, and I hear about it actually from other schools too. How in Courtenay where I work, and that they look up to you as a beacon of enlightenment. So thank you so much.
And thank you. I just want to say thank you for taking the $14,000 we give you and turning it into much, much more. And also for your partnerships with programs like the Foundry and just for providing an inclusive space in the village and for making our youth feel valuable, because they certainly are, and they don't always feel that way, I think. So thank you so much for what you do. All right. I think there's a no pressure to stay, honestly. That was a joke. So there's a recommendation there that we receive that delegation, council.
I'll move the council receive the delegation from the Cumberland Community School Society regarding the Community Services Partnership Agreement Annual Report.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor? Thank you. Okay, so next is correspondence from Comox First Nations. Do you want to speak to it? Does anybody else want to speak to it, or do you want me to just dive in? So recently we received a letter from the Comox First Nation around an event that's happening scheduled to happen in the future in Comox that is deeply racist and awful. And so they've written us a letter asking us for a letter of support and solidarity in saying that the Comox Valley is not welcome, does not welcome events like this. So you have the letter in your package, and Rachel has drafted us a resolution or a motion. If anybody's got questions or concerns or anything. No? Yes?
Yeah,
Councillor
no,
Tyrion?
No concerns. Yes, happy to stand with Comox First Nations on this, and there's no place for hate in the valley.
Thanks. So the draft we have is that council, in solidarity with the Comox First Nation and families and victims of violence against Indigenous women and girls, take a stance against any kind of offensive speech, including hate speech and discriminatory speech, that makes light of crimes committed against Indigenous women, targets Indigenous identity, and that perpetrates stereotypes and discrimination against women. If someone would like to move that.
Happy to move that.
Second.
Second, all in favor? No opposed? Okay, thank you.
There was one other Comox First Nations,
I put one.
I went the other way first. Sorry, so we'll go back to 5.1, which is Comox First Nation addition to reserve letter. And someone else can definitely speak to that one.
So this is just Comox First Nation wanting to add land, 3 parcels to their reserve area currently, and this would take place before any kind of treaty activity or anything like that. So they're wanting to, they need council support to be able to do that. So they're asking council.
And the lands are all in Union Bay.
Yeah.
So there's a recommendation there if no one has questions.
I'll move that council provide a, oh, sorry, is there any discussion?
No, I had a quick look at the map. These lands are all within the Regional Growth Strategy Union Bay node, as far as I can tell, and so using them for housing, which is their stated purpose, seems great.
Right. I'll move that council provide a letter to the Comox First Nation in support of the addition to reserve application to the Government of Canada for 3 parcels of fee simple land held by the nation in the Union Bay area.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Okay, reports. Souther House Deconstruction and Restoration Project. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. So we issued a request for proposal to complete this project, which was funded in Council's 2024 budget earlier this spring. And it's a tricky project a lot because of the access and the unknowns. And so the request for proposal enabled proponents to be creative in how they chose to figure out how to get machine access or however they wanted to get across that. I guess you could call it a bridge, although that might be a bit of a stretch. So, yeah, we issued the request for proposal, had a lot of interest at the site meeting, received 3 complete responses, of which the one that definitely rose to the top it requires some additional budget in order to award that contract. So this is a local company who clearly demonstrated an understanding of the project and had a creative methodology, including using a bridge that they have access to already that they could just place down and then go in and do the site remediation works, including some fairly complex work with, I guess you could say, hazardous materials and the disposal of them, likely at the RDN right now based on a closure up in Campbell River. So, yeah, if we want to proceed and get the project done this year, then additional financial resources are required, and this includes a little bit of contingency. Yeah, that's That's basically the summary.
Thank you. Questions, anybody?
So are these contracts then, are they a firm contract, or is it possible to be going over budget on these ones too, or?
If the scope changes, then we would be looking at issuing change orders.
Okay.
So this, right now, it's a fixed price, and we would look at entering into a contract for, I can't remember the exact dollar value. It's the budget minus a little bit for contingency. And then something substantially different from the conditions expected, or an additional scope change on our part, would be what would trigger
Okay.
a change in the contract value.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that could be something, like them finding something that we're unaware of on site or something, but we've gone through there pretty,
Yeah, it's a hard one because the site doesn't have clear boundaries. Like, the further you wander into the woods, the more you find things. But we've accepted
kinds of
that not
things.
all the concrete necessarily is going to be removed. Like, we primarily want to take care of the hazards and allow the site to naturally regenerate.
Okay.
Should we end up with some additional funds at the end, like remaining contingency, we may be even will be able to kind of kickstart that restoration project with importing some fill and seeding, but currently that's not within scope. So it would just be leaving it to nature essentially. And over time, I think, well, nature's already started to take over. Yeah.
Good.
questions? Anybody?
It's a little disconcerting. That's 1/3 of the budget.
I think the
Get
tricky
it done with this year than wait more years.
Yeah, the tricky thing was it was hard for us to set a budget in the first place without going to tender and getting people to actually think about how they would achieve the project. So it was, I think the original best guess was it was going to be quite a bit lower. Now, that being said, we've talked to a few like engineering and bridge providers, and alone you could spend hundreds of thousands of dollars just on facilitating access. So it's been a tricky one because we've been looking at this for a few years, and yeah, it is substantially more than was originally requested in the budget.
Thanks.
I'm happy to find the money so that we don't have another fire this season. So thank you for your work on that. There's a recommendation there.
I'll move the council approve an additional expenditure of $47,200 funded from the general financial stabilization reserve for the Souther House deconstruction restoration project for a total project budget of $157,200, and the council direct staff to bring forward an amendment to the adopted 2024-2028 financial plan bylaw to reflect this additional expenditure.
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous as well. Okay. 2023 annual report. Rachel. Okay.
Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
So staff has prepared your annual report for 2023, and it includes a progress report on council's strategic priorities, an update on municipal services and operations for 2023, and the audited financial statements. It also includes some information on community support, and I think that's about it of the highlights. We're happy to have any additions or corrections that council members see if we've missed anything. And other than that, if it's all good, we're asking council to give direction to give notice of the annual meeting, which we're proposing for June 10th, the next regular council meeting, at which council will consider any submissions and questions from the public received in the interim.
Thank you. Questions? Anybody find anything weird in there? I did not. Well, I'm still scrolling to see if I found anything.
Like the new pictures.
Yeah, no, I was, the report looks very nice, very good. Happy to see you highlighting our new childcare spaces, our new dock, our 125th anniversary, Tree Islands open. There's quite a few highlights in there. Yeah, it looked like a good year. We still have money in the bank.
Well, because it's the 2023.
I know.
We're going to do that again this year somehow, though, so it's going to be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. Here's hoping.
There's a recommendation there.
You got it?
I'll move the council give notice of the annual general meeting on June 10th, 2024, at which council will consider the 2023 annual report and submissions and questions from the public.
Seconder?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Okay, wastewater project disinfection design change. Hello, Rob.
Well-
Oh, and your online,
This is where the money is.
this is where the, yeah.
The 47.
I mean, you're not asking for more money this time,
Oh, we're saving it.
so, That's-
Yeah, those details are to come.
yeah, they'll come later, I'm sure.
So just,
Sorry.
Yeah,
that's all
don't
good.
get in front of that.
good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, just when we thought we had things kind of finalized with the wastewater project design, we have a recommendation from the current design engineer to actually take a look at changing disinfection process. And I'll turn this over to Hans in a minute, but it really boils down to some challenges with the current chlorine dioxide disinfection process and some efficiencies, I guess, benefits switching to UV. Something that we kind of chatted, it kind of came up at our design meeting a couple weeks ago, and there's been some work kind of in the background going on with the design engineer to do a bit further analysis in order for us to bring this in front of council and provide you with a few more details. So there's a couple of recommendations there, but I think at this point I'll turn it over to Hans Seidemann from Collier Projects Leaders, and I'll sit down and let him take the floor.
Thanks, Rob. Hello, Hans.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thanks, Rob. So as Rob alluded to, we have a recommendation from the design engineer to consider a change to the disinfection process that's been planned for the wastewater treatment facility. As I describe in my report, this recommendation arises from the discovery that there's a requirement for redundancy in the disinfection systems that hadn't previously been identified. And in order to meet that redundancy requirement with the currently envisioned disinfection system, would require purchasing another chlorine dioxide generator. And in looking at their options for how to meet that redundancy requirement, they discovered that a new option that had previously not been available to the village was now viable in the use of UV disinfection. And switching wholesale to UV disinfection as opposed to just using it for some or part of the redundancy requirement actually creates a number of potential benefits to the project. The elimination of a number of project components, simpler regulatory review and approval, and far lower ongoing operating costs. It's difficult to say at this point what the overall budget impacts will be from this decision, but it's important to point out that that meeting the redundancy requirement is going to have some impact on the budget one way or the other. And so the request at this point is to provide or to receive direction from council on the preferred design approach, which will allow the design to be detailed to a further extent, which will allow for more accurate cost estimation and a better understanding of whether this represents an overall increase, decrease, or no net change to the overall project budget. Obviously, if there's any increase that results from this direction, then the budget will be reported back to council with recommendations for how any shortfall, if encountered, can be addressed. But it's not known and not I think anticipated at this point that there will be an increase or a decrease. It's simply unknown, and we require direction in order to make that determination.
Thank you. Paul, do you have anything to add?
Thank you. Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. In this particular case, Hans and I get to be the two different sides of the same coin. because as he says, for the implications to the capital project, we're just not sure if it's going to make it cheaper. But the side I look at here now is the long-term operational, and it certainly becomes cheaper if we have UV in place because the chemical consumption is reduced. So we're expecting an operational cost saving in the order of $100,000 a year on chemicals. So it's possible yet it might come at an increased cost to the capital project, but the major financial benefit is on the operating side from here on. The other thing that this change would do, actually, I'll backtrack a moment. What has enabled the change from a technical point of view is the fact that we have tertiary treatment designed in. When we started out on the project, amazingly 3 years ago, tertiary treatment was a future thing, would make provision for it. If we don't have it, you can't do UV. But now that we do have it, it enables this option. And if we'd had it from the start, we would have had this on the table from the start. So the extra funding we got to do tertiary treatment has enabled the technical viability of this option. Whether it's cheaper because of the changes in the midstream of a project is a different question, but it's one way where we can wring value out of the extra expense of tertiary treatment. So that's good. And then the chemical disinfection part, if we go this route, becomes a wet weather system primarily. And that means it's being used under conditions of high wet weather dilution. So it changes the game for that. And the designer's recommendation is to actually go back to ordinary chlorine rather than chlorine dioxide for the wet weather system. It's simpler still. And so, as Hans was saying, there's a few simplifications that come. But it is a major midstream change in the project. I think it's a good one overall, especially from the operational point of view, but change in the middle of a project is potentially disruptive. So that's what is being weighed up at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Therrien.
Hi, thanks for that, you guys. Nice to see you guys without asking for money right away. Are we still using all of the equipment that we've purchased so far then? I know that there's one chlorine thing that we've purchased already, and that will be used as our backup, so that'll be the redundancy?
Not necessarily. So one of the things that if we were to, even as we were waiting for direction on the approach to take here, we have requested that the construction manager inquire with equipment suppliers as to whether they would accept return of any of the equipment that would be no longer necessary if we took this approach, as that would obviously provide some savings back to the project, as it wouldn't be a full sunk cost. I should point out, even if we were not able to return and receive any kind of reimbursement or restocking fee from that equipment, it's still the opinion of the design engineer that this is going to be the more cost-effective and beneficial approach to the project overall. So we're approaching that as a potential further benefit, but not counting on it to make this approach viable.
Okay, thank you. And what is that piece of equipment worth?
The chlorine dioxide generator itself is in the order of $200,000. And then there are some ancillary pieces of equipment, a neutralization blower motor or blower machine that pumps air into the disinfected effluent to remove any residual chemical concentrations. Those pieces of equipment would both be unnecessary. So we would either look to return them to the suppliers for a refund of some sort with a restocking fee, most likely, or we would simply look to sell them on to any willing buyer.
Okay, and then there's going to be another $100,000 fee while we sit idle and wait for this design. Is that right?
There's going to be some amount of redesign that's going to be required regardless, as I mentioned, because we have to add redundancy to the system, and there will be some amount of design change that will be needed to necessitate that. We estimate that pursuing this approach, the amount of time is a little bit more extensive because it is removing components and shifting things around, and we do have a rough estimate of those costs at $100,000. That's within the contingency amounts we have available in the budget currently. So we don't anticipate that cost presenting a budget increase. But there would be some costs regardless. We haven't gone to the effort of quantifying what the cost would be from the sort of doubling down approach with the current system. But it would not be negligible either. Probably not 100,000, but somewhere between half of that and that amount.
Okay. And then I guess my last question is, when did we? Are these new requirements from the provincial government? This requirement for redundancy, or when did this come up and necessitate all of this?
The requirements have been in place since for some time now. Certainly since last year. I would say it's only in the engineer's review of those requirements since joining the project and taking on the design that they identified that they weren't met in their current form. And I think it was an open question as to whether they needed to be met for the system to be able to receive approval, or whether they could be left as a to add later when and as necessary, or whether there was some other means of achieving compliance that wouldn't require the purchase of this equipment. So it's only in April that it was determined that no, in fact, this was going to be a requirement for the system to be able to get into operation, and that alternative means of achieving that redundancy weren't going to be acceptable to the regulator.
Okay, so this is a bit of a legacy from our last.
Yeah, and there's more to it. There's the chlorine dioxide generation within the main treatment works tenant. That's a concern as well from a health and safety perspective. So there's a few things that we probably missed that weren't initially identified that the new design engineer has brought to our attention. So,
if I may make one additional comment to that, one thing that has come out of the process over certainly the last year, it's been magnified. We'll be the first in Canada to use chlorine dioxide for wastewater. So there isn't a lot of experience within the regulators with it, and so they're sort of taking a fairly conservative approach, and we're going to have to be required to do a lot of the study on the creek about potential chlorine dioxide residuals because nobody's familiar with it. So we're under the microscope, and if it was a well-established technology, there might have been some latitude. If it was well familiar, I should say. It's established, just not in wastewater. It's used extensively in aquaculture and pulp mills. So, the BC municipality, BC Ministry of Environment, I should say, is they're sort of scrambling a little bit to read up on chlorine dioxide because they are not familiar with it. So we're breaking trail on it. If we go to UV, it's industry standard and everyone's well familiar with it, and it makes that path a lot easier. That was a part of the reason for the designer's recommendation.
Okay. Yep. Well, with the savings of $100,000 a year in chemicals, I think this is, even though it might cost us a bit more upfront, probably the way to go. We'll recoup that.
Yeah, grateful for that new engineer.
This is
Councillor Parkey.
Troy, actually, you got most of my questions. The one thing is it possible that our contingency, which we built into this, will be covering this? I mean, do you have any rough costs, or can you give us some sunshine news here that our contingency may be sufficient for this, or are we looking at a substantial difference?
I want to emphasize that at this point, we don't know what the net impact on the budget from the changes may be, because we can't know those until we're able to until we're able to do a more comprehensive budget update incorporating all of the they're pretty significant design changes, and they don't happen in a vacuum. It's not as simple as subtracting the cost for one item and adding them for another. They connect to each other, and there's a lot of interconnections there that are difficult to understand, and they can add up and contribute significantly to any new costs or savings. And I want to be very clear that the position of the design engineer is that this may very well, when all the design changes that kind of arise for this are incorporated and costed, it in their opinion, it may represent an overall budget savings. But it may, I don't want to mischaracterize the likelihood of that to council, and I don't want to say that it will be a savings and then come back with bad news at a later date. So, at this point, we're saying it's not clear, and it's not really possible to give any kind of confident assertion one way or the other. However, long-term costs, as Paul has pointed out, are going to be substantially lower. And I think there's no doubt that if a life cycle cost accounting were taken here, it would be the far lower cost approach. And that we hope that the net difference between certainly we know that the net difference between the UV approach and the continued chlorine dioxide approach, the designer considers the cost to be lower. It's only a question as to whether that lower cost represents a net increase or decrease to the overall budget. And we'll only know that once we're able to detail the designs further to make that estimation. But we certainly hope that if there is any overage, that the available contingency will be sufficient, and certainly the available contingency is sufficient to cover the anticipated short-term cost for design and extension of construction schedule.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate your position in not knowing until you actually look at the overall design. It does make sense to have a redundant system in there, particularly in light of if we would have a contaminated breach or something. The cost of fines would be quite substantial, I imagine. So, thank you.
Thanks. So having heard all that, I'm just wondering, so we now will have to go back to Comox because we've given them a different scenario. And I'm just wondering how often we're going to be using chlorine, like that wet weather flow, if you could hazard a guess. Is that like monthly? Is it 10 times? Is it how often?
It's a great Paul question. Paul?
Yes, that is a great Paul question. And I have done some homework on that. And the good news is it would have been a lot more in the past. And by that I mean prior to the Dunsmuir Avenue project in 2017, it averaged in the order of 25 days a year, and it peaked out in 2016 at 70 days a year that we had a flow over 7,200. Since the Dunsmuir project's been in place, so from 2018 to 2023, I've got the numbers in front of me here. 2018, it would have been used 17 times. In 2019, it would have been used 1 day. In 2020 for 11 days, 2021 for 6 days. And the last 2 years, it wouldn't have been used at all. So it's interesting, the last 2 years, the winters haven't been as wet. Yeah. But as we move forward, and it relates to our LWMP, and we carry on with the storm sewer separation and infiltration reduction work, these peak flows will reduce, and the goal is to get them permanently below 7,200. Right. So, that will be a future thing. But Cumberland's in the unusual situation. We have these high wet weather flows to start with for historical reasons. As we work on them, they will reduce, which is good. So for the last 5 years, the average has only been 5 days a year. So it's the UV, it's a good news story in that regard, and it would be great to get it to the point where that's all we ever need and the chemical system could be decommissioned. Exactly when that would happen, we're not sure, but that remains a future possibility and would be a nice place to be at.
Yeah, sure would. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Then there's a recommendation there.
I'll move that council receive the liquid waste management plan, stage 3, execution, and oh, sorry, I'm on
That's the wrong report.
the wrong one here. I recommend that council receive the presentation from Hans Cederman, project manager with Colliers Project Leaders, related to a proposed change in disinfection treatment for the wastewater project, and that council approve the change from the current plan to utilize chlorine dioxide for the disinfection treatment process to the use of ultraviolet treatment, and that council direct staff to provide Comox First Nation with an update on the changes.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you so much. And on to liquid waste management plan. Am I doing that right? Yep. Liquid waste management plan stage 3, sole source procurement.
All right, well, I'll briefly introduce this and again turn it over to Paul Nash. So the current consent order imposed on us by the province, or that was placed on us by the province after negotiations and mediation. We've always been under the impression that the deadline for submission of the LWP and completion of the works was the end of 2025. And upon discussions with the section head of the Ministry of Environment recently, it was brought to our attention that's not, in fact, the case. And so we have this deadline of December of this year to have the plan submitted, and so we've been working with the section head on implementation plan. And so Paul can speak to a bit more about that. In order to continue on with these tight timelines, we'd like to actually sole source the environmental impact study work to Ecofish. They've done the baseline study work and a bunch of other wetland study and monitoring in the past as part of this project, as part of the LWMP Stage 2. And so there's a number of recommendations, but I'll maybe let Paul dive a bit more into this and provide more details.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob. I won't screen share the memo since you've all got that in front of you, but yes, you could almost summarize it by saying we're sort of trying to put the band back together. Everybody here that I want to use for stage 3 has worked with us already on it. And the original goal had been to get the phase 1 upgrades in place and be permit compliant several years ago, of course, and then we could do study on the creek, this official EIS, and our stage 3 to see what, if anything else, was required. And we knew in the future we'd be doing tertiary treatment. You know, the game has changed. We've got our funding for tertiary treatment, which we're implementing, but of course things have taken longer, and we've been told this deadline is hard. So I'd wanted to do this in post-upgrade conditions, but instead it'll be a predictive EIS, which is actually how they normally are. So we had hired Ecofish back in 2020 to start work in anticipation of this, and we were expecting then to have upgrades completed in short order. So we've had to put them on hold with EIS work for the last year or two while we got everything else organised. So now we'd like to carry on and get them going. So and while we've got a nominal budget of 90, I'm not sure if that's what we will be up for, but that's just sort of our allocation until we scope things out. We're having meetings with the ministry later this week and early next week to sort out what the details are, and then we'll be able to work out exactly what work needs to be done by whom. But the most expedient way to get it done is to bring back the players that we've had up to date, and that's effectively what this team is, and Ecofish is probably the largest piece of that pie, hence the need to sole source them. I think that's probably enough. The rest of it is there in the memo, unless there's anything else you want to add, Rob?
No, happy to answer any questions.
Council, questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm a bit confused as to why this is suddenly a rush. I mean, I don't know, I'm reading the consent order and it states pretty clearly December 31st, 2024. So I don't know, it seems like we're always all of a sudden in a big rush to do something, and then we sit and wait. But yeah, I'm a bit surprised that this one is like taking us by surprise, I guess. But having said that, here we are. All of this is within our allocated budget currently, all of this work, and it's just a matter that we're doing it without an RFP, is that?
Correct.
Yeah. And these are companies that we've worked with before and trust, yeah. So I'm just a bit, like I say, wondering why we're surprised that this is happening.
I'll speak to that just briefly. The extension that had been contemplated, a 1-year extension. Originally, we were under the understanding that if we needed more time, we had that. And they've pointed to that black and white letter and said that's what we've got. We actually will need more time for the construction of the project because it won't be done by the end of this year. So we're putting in a submission to them about that. But for the LWMP, it remains on the plate, and the instruction is to get it done. I'll also say that my recommendation for the team for Stage 3 LWMP would be the same regardless, to use the people that we've used so far rather than going for a new team. That had been the intention, we just hadn't got around to executing it. So it would be, that would still be the approach I would want to take rather than switch horses and bring in an entirely new company at this stage. We're in the unusual situation with our Stage 3 LWMP that what would normally be the major part of it, studying the wastewater treatment upgrades, is going to be done or substantially underway as we go. So what we have left for the Stage 3 LWMP is everything else, which is relatively simple in comparison. So it's a case of wrap it up and document it and get it in. That's why the timeline's aggressive but achievable. But yes, it would have been good to have been in this situation last year, but we had been working on the position to get the upgrades done and study post-upgrade conditions to see what else. But anyway, the ministry has said no, hold to this timeline and move forward now. So here we are.
Go ahead, Councillor Burke.
I think I concur with you. It makes sense to go for a sole source contract, and this is in line with what could be justified through usual procurement. I don't think it leaves us open to any risk, and I think we'll end up not maybe saving money, but not spending more money on project delays where we do include another party. So I think this is the right way to go.
Anything?
No, I'll read.
I just have so in the memo, so I'm not sure what that's called. Yep, it's a memo. Under the scope of work, it speaks to updating our stormwater and sanitary sewer master plans. Were we planning on doing that at some future date?
We'll do it succinctly at the same time, and we'll utilize our current engineer, ISL engineering. So they have backgrounds in updating master plans, and so they'll work on updating those plans, and then Paul can speak to it more because I'm definitely not an LWMP expert, but we take some of that information and use it in the LWMP document.
So is that simply, like, that's not updating the plan to say what we're going to do in future years, it's updating the plan to see where that master plan is right now in terms of storm and sewer separation?
No, it would be needed to be updated to reflect the current state of our systems, but then also look to the future for continued storm sewer separation and sanitary servicing, what that looks like in the future as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but
So that's correct. It's a future-looking thing. It is. I mean, we finished our Stage 2 in 2018, so certain things have changed since then. So the idea is certainly update it to current, but yes, what are the expectations for the future? Has the growth plan changed? So the sanitary sewer master plan, for example, might have changed if an area is now included that wasn't previously, or vice versa. The stormwater management one is normally a separate thing. It's part of the LWMP, but it's sort of a standalone thing. In the case of Cumberland, of course, it's intimately linked because of the storm sewer separation. So these were effectively two plans that Cumberland had to do anyway. It's just that for getting the conceptual part of these plans done, we now do it this year rather than on a different time frame. We don't need to study, for the purposes of the LWMP, we do not need detailed construction-ready drawings of this, that, and the other. But what it really is what is going to change, update it to current, and what is going to change for the future. And the main thing is what then is our plan and time frame for the completion of the storm sewer separation, because that is the key for getting these wet weather flows down, and as we just talked about with disinfection, you're getting them below those benchmarks. So Cumberland's wet weather flow peaking factor in the order of 16 to 20 to 1. It's meant to be down at 2 or 3 to 1, so we actually still have a lot of work to do on that, and that'll be the major forward-looking thing for the Stage 3 LWMP, is what is Cumberland's plan and time frame for that. And I might add to that, normally with a completed LWMP, there's a borrowing bylaw in there, which is normally to fund the construction of the treatment plant, which is, for example, Powell River and Tofino. That was their situation. Here, we've already borrowed the money for the treatment plant and so on and so on. The major forward-looking work would be the completion of the storm sewer separation. So if there's going to be borrowing coming out of the LWMP, that's what it would be for, rather than treatment upgrades. So it's a little bit different, but that's why it's important to get that plan for storm sewer separation done to the level where we're able to do a meaningful budget, and that's what ISL would be working on.
So that's a bit of, so where I'm going with this is we've talked in the past about the potential for daylighting some of our storm water and using green infrastructure rather than piping it, and that potentially could save us a whole bunch of money, as I understand. And I'm not sure that we're going to have time to do that kind of investigative comparison style work with this updating, if we have to update our stormwater and sanitary sewer master plans before the end of the year. So is ISL, are we just looking at, we're going to put them in two different pipes and pipe them to different places, and that's all we're going to do?
The major thing is to get the stormwater out of the sanitary sewer system. You could say that for the purposes of the LWMP, that's the key goal here, is to identify how we're going to do that. If the village wants to daylight things, then certainly that can be looked at. But I guess conceptually that can be looked at. One of the things currently with the stormwater, where it exits, for example, at the end of Dunsmuir, and how we'll have it down there at the lagoons with the stormwater treatment wetland. The exit points are getting wetland treatment, and there's one other one where we could consider adding that as part of this plan. So I think these things can be looked at a conceptual level. It wouldn't preclude future daylighting. The key thing is, from the ministry's point of view, is get the stormwater out of the sanitary sewer system, and we just need to have the plan for how we do that.
Thanks. Go ahead, Rob.
So I think just to additionally in response to that is, a lot of the storm sewer separation occurs at the property, right? So, and the situation Cumberland's faces is we have a lot of sanitary sewer mains in our lanes, and so what we do when we upgrade those sewers is we also install new storm sewers. So we provide that second connection to the property, and typically that water is then separated at the property into the appropriate mains and then connects to trunk mains. So I don't know that there's an opportunity at that point to do any kind of special storm sewer treatment or other options.
Yeah.
there may be options more related to, say, street improvements, where you could look at rain guards, so it's more surface runoff in those street locations versus property connections, but.
And that wouldn't be part of this, the scope of this, like,
No, I mean, you could, the storm sewer master plan might have recommendations on certain types of treatments, general treatments that you could incorporate when you actually do detailed design for these street improvements. But really, the focus of storm sewer separation it really originates at the property. I mean, there is some local connections still within the community, like a catch basin that goes directly into, say, a sanitary main. A lot of those have been removed over the last number of years, so.
okay. Any other questions? Okay, there's a big, long recommendation there.
I'll move the council provide authorization to sole source consulting work to Zinc Communications, Integrated Sustainability, and EcoFish for Stage 3 LWMP. That council direct staff to publish a notice to intent on to sole source consulting work to EcoFish for Stage 3 LWMP for a value of up to $90,000. That council provide authorization to staff to allocate the approved budget of up to $203,400 amongst the consultants to be hired for the Stage 3 LWMP. And that council provide authorization to village staff to allocate the budget to and execute contracts with the various consultants as appropriate.
Thank you.
Second.
And all in favor? That's unanimous as well. Okay, thanks, Rob. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
And Hans, if you're still there, thank you. Okay, collaboration opportunities with Comox First Nation.
Okay, thank you. So one of Council's strategic priorities is to work with Indigenous people on mutually beneficial partnerships. And then also Council has given staff direction to explore partnership opportunities with Comox First Nation on watershed security for conservation and also for hydro generation for the number 2 dam project. So just going back and forth a little bit to try and figure out how to make this happen, we landed on the thought that the village should invite Comox First Nation Chief and Council into a discussion meeting on different collaborations, because those are just 2, but there's actually, I'm sure there's other ones that you could discuss at this meeting. And so if council wishes, or if council agrees to have that letter sent and write that letter to KFN, and then KFN wants to partner and discuss these collaboration opportunities with you, then staff from both organizations would work out the logistics, and likely maybe we would take our team over to them, and or however it works, we would just make sure that we follow their lead of what they would want. And so so that's where we're at this point to be able to make that happen.
Awesome, thanks. Questions? Go ahead, Council. Go ahead,
Oh, just
Councilor.
I think that's a wise idea. I thought from our perspective, I think we've got some very good intentions, particularly around the power generation. But it would be nice to hear if there's something that's pressing for them that they'd like to see for us to follow as well. So I think a face-to-face meeting with their council would be very beneficial to us both.
Councilor Sullivan?
It's been a long time since they've been here. We've had them for lunch before. I feel like the last couple times we've been over there, so maybe we would invite them here.
Yeah, we could definitely offer to feed them.
Yeah.
Used to do the C2C kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since that.
Yeah.
Especially since we've invited them here. But I don't know if they have capacity for the time, but that would be a nice idea, I think.
For sure, thanks. Councilor
Sorry, and
Terry?
I'll just add to that, like, it might even be more than one discussion. So yeah, and we'll definitely work out that, like, because if they would like to come here, we would make that happen as well.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Definitely like a lunch and a sharing food kind of thing, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to any kind of collaboration we can do with them. I'm just at our previous council meeting, or 2 council meetings ago, we gave direction to get a recosting on the number 2. So before we start talking with KFN about that, we should I'd like to hear back and figure out what exactly where we're at with that project. And
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
the timeline on that?
That was a recosting, and I believe looking at the scope again.
Scope, yeah.
Or
yeah.
and
But
so
yeah,
that's where the complication side is. So I'm not exactly sure where that's at yet, but we're just I'll get back to council to find that.
okay,
out.
because
Yeah.
I'd like to,
Yeah, I agree. Actually.
before we get everybody's hopes up about things, we should know where.
Yeah. Yeah, and we
How
could
we're-
always
how we're
meet
gonna
and leave
proceed.
that one out until we know more. Just tell them where we're at with it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I wouldn't want to wait if they're keen. I wouldn't want to say, oh,
Right.
hold up till we can get this.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
let's
let's
not-
just
let-
go forward without it and add it in
Yeah,
later.
Add
Yeah.
it in later. That's what I'm
Okay.
thinking, just to make
Awesome.
sure that we're not getting hopes up where we can't deliver.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, my thoughts were for the letter that we actually wouldn't be very prescribed. We might just ask, hey, would you like to meet and discuss opportunities? Because
Yeah.
then that way it's a free flowing of ideas as well. So I was thinking that.
That sounds great.
Yep. Okay. There's a recommendation there.
I'll move that council invite the Comox First Nation Chief and Council to discuss collaboration on partnership opportunities.
Second.
And all in favor? And that's a unanimous one too. So we're on to Union of BC Municipalities Convention meeting requests. Rachel?
It's time already to start thinking about UBCM with the publication of the provincial appointment book last week, which was distributed to you in your council correspondence package on Friday. It's right now it's an opportunity for an early discussion for council to strategize a bit on any meetings with cabinet ministers as well as senior ministry staff. Also, an opportunity to check in with each other on who plans to attend UBCM and what days. If you have that information available. We were advised recently that cabinet minister meetings will take place Monday to Friday this year. I think Monday is the new day. Last year it was Tuesday to Friday. And in the report here, there's some notes of your discussions last year after your last year's attendance at UBCM, and I just wanted to highlight a comment that was made to focus lobbying efforts to cabinet ministers and questions and requests for information to meetings with senior staff, and the distinction between those two types of meetings. Cabinet minister meetings, of course, tend to be quite quick, 15 minutes, I think was the max. And senior staff meetings could be as long as 30 minutes. So you get more time with senior staff there. Also wanted to point out that this year being an provincial election year, that cabinet ministers will not be able to make any commitments on behalf of future governments. They're in caretaker mode before the election. And I'd also like to point out the deadline dates for meeting requests. So cabinet minister deadline requests are June 21st. So we consider those ones first for that deadline, but there's more flexibility for meetings with senior staff. Advance meeting requests are August 21st, but you also have the on-site appointment desk where you can make appointments at UBCM when you're there. So staff is asking council to have that discussion about who's going, and if you're ready to have that discussion, talk about potential meeting topics that you'd like to discuss, and in particular for early discussion is identifying any regional or joint topics with other local governments in the region. The staff at the province really emphasized the need to know accurate number of events for their logistical arrangements at the convention center. That was an important point for them. And you also discussed which council member meeting will lead each topic for a meeting. That one's a bit challenging to identify, I think, at this point, because we don't get the meeting scheduled until about a week or 10 days before the convention. So at this point, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. So,
Okay. thoughts, council?
On the river. BC
You want to
Hydro.
go back to
We gotta hit the hydro people.
Hydro, BC Hydro?
Well, they opened the
Staff?
Well, they closed the door at the last meeting, but then what I saw at ABCC, the door opened again.
There's a little crack, yeah.
Which
There
we
was
need
a
to
little
also
crack.
still follow up on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's, I wrote down, Walrus and Modi.
Yeah, and Modi as well.
Because we're always, I mean, our usual requests regarding the forest security and watershed security papers, and trying to keep lobbying for maybe buying our forest land up there and protecting our watershed so that we can stop cutting down trees in our watershed. So I think we should keep banging on that drum. And then I wrote down Moti. It's unfortunate the cycling delegation isn't coming this evening. They're presenting to CVRD tomorrow. So we'll get more information then, but from what I read on the report, it looks like it's $15 million and a potentially 20 million years, 20-year timeline. Might as well be 20 million. 20-year timeline for this connective trail. So maybe we'll be better off trying to work with Moti and get them to do upgrades to the intersection so that it's safer. So that if that trail is that long in coming, at least people will be able to get through that major intersection under the underpass in a safer manner. And maybe we can talk to the CVRD before we go for this meeting, but maybe we shoot for the moon and just ask them to give us an entire lane of the bypass as a bike lane, and Modi can just build us a bike lane all the way to Courtney. That bypass is huge. It's never so busy on there that all 4 lanes of traffic are needed. So I think there's room to just turn 1 lane of that into a bike lane.
With a hard barrier.
With a hard barrier.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Modi can fund the whole thing and show us how progressive they are, and yeah.
How into active travel they are.
Into active travel they are, and are you listening out there?
Just need to suggest
Yeah.
the opportunity.
So I don't know, but that proposal would take quite a bit of work, and like I say, I think we should maybe approach the CVRD with that idea and see if rather than and at least test the waters with Modi and see if that's at all possible or completely out of the question. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think for Cumberland, we could go to Modi and talk to them about what we'd like to see at the interchange. So that's
At the
one
very least,
one
yes.
topic, and then we could add the regional district for the second for the
shoot the moon.
connector and
Yeah.
just outline the struggle we have and that's that.
Because $15 million in 20 years seems like a long
Really
time
long.
to wait for our trail
Yeah.
and a safe way to bike to Courtney.
Yeah.
What are those next generation?
Well, yeah.
All of our
but
flying cars
But
by
if we do it now, and then it would be both generations.
Yeah.
happy.
But I'm curious about, so I understand the intention behind the Walrus meeting,
Yep.
Land Water Resources. But it like your ask sounds like a cabinet minister meeting. So how would we frame that in a staff meeting? We could ask for more information on the watershed security plan or the fund or we could just
Or funding for the PWI initiative,
yeah.
or would it be worthwhile to offer them a seat at the table at the PWI initiative? And then they can pay for the meetings too? I don't know if that's possible, or advantageous or not, but, yeah. But I think we should stay on their radar.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the Modi? Would you want advocacy, like with the minister, and then also a staff for Modi, or for this bike lane and using?
I'm not sure it's useful. I have been advised to just not bother with cabinet minister
So we're
meetings
just
at
doing
all.
staff for all of it. Okay.
From someone who's a cabinet minister,
Especially since there may no longer be a minister.
because they actually can't do anything for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we need to frame it as a staff. It needs to be a staff thing. Like, it's not really, it's advocacy in a way that's related to staff, I think. And we can also do multiple, with staff meetings, you can add multiple ministries. So we could have
I see.
forestry come and talk with Walrus. I bet they get along really well, the staff people. Which might be useful to try and combine those two. Let's do that.
Sorry, one more thing. I'm just
What do you guys
wondering.
think about
if-
that?
That's a good idea.
Be like, you manage the act, and you are going to give us money to change what's happening up there, because the act isn't managed well, or something. I don't know.
So I'm just wondering if council, like, given that staff timelines are August 21st, or whatever, we could, I guess, bring some stuff back, and then you could tell us if we've hit the mark.
For
or-
more information?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Okay.
Do you have enough from us? Did that make sense?
We will just summarize the watershed, joint staff with joint ministries, hydro generation for the Reservoir project, and the third was the active transportation, and potentially 2 different meetings for that. One just with Cumberland and one with regional.
Potentially, yeah.
But yeah, that's a potential one. to
Yeah.
Talk to people tomorrow and see what
Yeah.
they think, or if there's any other
Yeah.
support for that down there.
Okay.
Because I mean, I'm sure we'd need everybody's support to
Yeah.
to do that.
Okay.
It's ambitious.
Sorry, I'm not familiar enough with the project of the CBRD's lead on that active travel project.
They seem to be, yeah.
Perhaps that was something
That they might take, yeah.
If we never get a big ask, we'd all need to be there. at the
And
table.
then, yeah. So if the CBRD ends up doing the safe route, then we would just do the interchange. Because I'm not sure how we'll get input into that. Okay. If at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main one
Then
and
we
more
might want
realistic
some
one,
influence
to be
there.
honest.
True.
For now is to just try and get that interchange fixed,
Yeah.
so that,
CVRD seems to be pretty good at getting money, though. I mean, I think it's important that we're all on the exact same page so that
Yeah.
our asks aren't diluted.
yep. Agreed.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And that's all you need on that? Okay. Oh, yep, we gave you that. Okay. So bylaws.
Is there a motion
I
or
don't think
anything
so.
to
I
go with
think
that?
we just said, we just gave Rachel direction to
I think
come back.
there's consensus on those 3 things. I'll make a note in the minutes and we'll come back to you
Okay.
with some.
Yeah, do you want a motion for it to come back? No? Yeah? So that's what we could do.
Okay, I'll move that council provide direction to staff on topics for meeting requests with provincial cabinet ministers and staff at the 2024 Union of British Columbia Municipalities Convention, and report back to council.
And report back to council. Okay, thank you.
Second.
And all in favor? And that's carried as well. Okay. Bylaws now. Community nuisance abatement bylaw. Are we just passing it?
Just read it.
Because we saw it last time?
It's just
I'm
at
ready.
third reading.
I'm ready.
Yep.
Okay, who's gonna do it?
I'll move that council give third reading to the community nuisance abatement bylaw number 1210, 2024.
All in favor?
Look out,
Hallelujah.
Cumberland.
Hallelujah. Okay, and
Joking.
do not
Joking.
make that joke. That's not what it is, everyone. Okay, Parks and Recreation fees bylaw. We're just getting close to the end of the meeting, and this is what happens.
We're hilarious.
Just kidding. That was funny.
Where is it? I'm ready for this one too.
It's on the last page. Oh, yeah, final page of the agenda.
This one's adoption of the fees. I think I might have mistaken it last time when I said it was at third.
Okay, yep, so this is, I'll recommend that council adopt the Parks and Recreation Fees Bylaw number 1211/2024.
Second.
All in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. Okay, so there's no new business, but there's a lot of notices, motions, and announcements, so bear with me. Please do check the website before you come down to council chambers for these meetings or wherever else they are being held, just to make sure that nothing has changed. Particularly for the Village Hall meeting, June 3rd, which is set for 7 p.m. at the Chinatown Pavilion in Coal Creek Historic Park, which is just behind Jumbo's Cabin. And we'll be there unless it's like torrential rain and high winds or some other dangerous situation. Secondly, official community plan engagement, local economy in focus workshop on May 30th at 4 p.m. You need to register for that meeting so that we know numbers, so that we can fit you all in. Did I say May 30th at 4 p.m.? Yes. Please register at planning@cumberland.ca. Third, wastewater upgrades alternate approval process. We're going to have open office hours to learn about the project and have your questions answered on the borrowing on May 31st from 1:30 to 3:30 in council chambers. If you have questions outside of that time, please email info@cumberland.ca. And next, wastewater upgrades alternative approval process. The deadline to submit a form saying you don't want us to borrow this money is June 11th at 4 p.m. And lastly, you can come visit your friendly council members at the June 2nd, which is this weekend. Nope. Yes, it is. This weekend's farmers market, first farmers market in the Village Square from 10 till 1 p.m. And council members will be there because we like
Some councilmen.
some councilors will be there at various times
You can-
between 10 and 1.
You can visit one of the councilors at the Cumberland Cup.
Yeah. Or you can
Right,
visit.
and the rest of us will be heading down to the cup after that. Okay, now we need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, we custom period, no?
Question period.
Oh, sorry, questions.
Look how
We
supportive.
still have an audience.
Look at how supportive they are.
See? Sometimes people don't last.
I'd like to respond to that question. They left.
Well, I'm impressed with you guys. Yeah, nice one.
Do you have any questions on any other agenda items? Not really. Any online? No? Okay, now we can adjourn.
I'll move adjournment.
Thank you. All in favor?
All right.
All right, thanks, Neil.